Hey guys, happy Wednesday. So for this particular lesson, we are going to move beyond actually joining the war and moving into World War II against Japan and within the Allied powers against the Axis powers. And so, just to kind of give you some details about some things that are going on during the war. So, within this 4 year period, so between 1941 and roughly 1945, we have over 400,000 US servicemen that are killed during that 4 years in war. And so that's a pretty big number of um, members of the military that are being killed. And so as you can tell, it's pretty intense. There's a lot of death, a lot of just competition and battles between each of the sides. And so Japan, they are fighting savagely against us. We are doing our best to fight them, but they are trying to fight and they want to win at any cost. We want to win as well, but they have a more intense way of doing that. And so we learned that the Japanese are capturing our soldiers and they are mistreating them and torturing them, putting them to death on a whim. And so doing that over and over, and it's really impacting how we're doing against Japan. And so with the Japanese fighting so intensely, they also come up with this new weapon, and what it's called the kamikaze. And basically, it is Japanese soldiers who are willing to give their lives for the cause to win the war. And so they will fly airplanes, bombers into buildings, into places in order to kind of prolong and get their victory. And so the kamikaze is a huge thing that starts impacting the American soldiers. And so Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was our president when the war began, remember he made the infamous speech about Pearl Harbor. He decides that in 1943 that we are going to have the goal of having an unconditional surrender from all the Axis powers. And so that includes Germany, that includes Japan, that includes Italy. So we want them to surrender completely to the Allied powers. And so that is our goal moving forward. But as this time goes by, we realize that something has got to happen for us to actually win this war against Japan. And so we have we actually get a surrender from Germany. Adolf Hitler kills himself and they surrender. But Japan is still fighting us. We are going head to head. And in 1944, we actually start something called island hopping. And so what we do is, if you think about Japan, it's an island and there's islands around it. And so we are actually going from one island and hopping to the next island in hopes that we get closer to Japan to possibly have a full land invasion, so actually taking over Japan on land. We have a battle in 1945. It was the Battle of Okinawa, and we actually are put in a bad place at Okinawa. So basically, the casualties, the deaths, the injuries are horrifying. So about 50% of all of the U.S. forces that invade this island were actually killed or wounded. So that is 50%. That's half of the soldiers that actually go on to Okinawa. They are killed. And so we are at a place where we have to make a decision. Are we going to let this continue on? The Japanese basically are willing to keep going until every man that they have to fight is gone, is dead. They are willing to fight until they run completely out of materials, and they're willing to do what it takes to beat us. And so we've got to have a strategy. And so during this time period, Franklin D. Roosevelt passes away. We have the new president, which is Harry S. Truman. And so, really, Harry S. Truman, when he becomes president, has to make a decision. And so, this decision is based upon what all these horrible things going on with Japan and us fighting them. So, the two options that he has is that, are we going to do a full invasion, which is invading the land, going and storming Japan, and then fighting on Japan's land against the Japanese, or a new option, which during the time period of the war, Franklin D. Roosevelt the president at the time, was well aware of something called the Manhattan Project. And so this was a project that was developed to actually create an atomic bomb. And so this atomic bomb was being developed and eventually tested. And so this was a new type of warfare for us, a new way, a new option for America. And so Harry S. Truman really had to think hard and make a decision. Are we going to invade, have a full land invasion, or are we going to drop the atomic bomb? And so there were good things about possibly invading. There are good things about the atomic bomb, but there are also some negative sides to that. And they really had never dropped an atomic bomb, so they didn't know what the outcomes of that would be. Did not think that maybe a full land invasion would work because of the intensity and the savagery of how the Japanese army was actually fighting us. And so he comes to a point where he has to make a decision. And so what you guys are going to do is based off what you know, what we talked about with what the situation going on between us and Japan, you are going to go to your Google Drive, the link that I sent to you. And based off this, I want you to, by yourself, I want you to answer the questions here. So choosing your name, decide, click who you are, and then you're going to go through and you're going to answer each of those questions. So we have the questions here. And then you're going to think about, do you think that the Japanese are going to consider or surrender unconditionally? And so you'll make your decision and then explain why. Well, on the next page, you're going to get with a partner. And let me show you what that will look like. So on the next page, it would look something like this. And so with your partner, you are going to have to decide two pros, so two good things about invading Japan by land, two cons about invading Japan by land, then do the same for two pros for the atomic bomb and two cons for the dropping the atomic bomb. And so kind of brainstorming different options that you have and what are the good things about it, what are the bad things about it. And then on the last section with your partner, and you might have a different response than they do, but you are going to decide. You are President Harry S. Truman in 1945, and you have to make a decision. And so, are you going to have a full-scale invasion of Japan itself by land, or are you going to drop the atomic bombs in Japan? And so, you're going to choose an answer, and you have to explain your reasoning. Give me two specific reasons why you feel like you would make that decision. And so based off of those things, you should be able to complete this assignment with your partner in about probably 30 minutes if you use your time wisely. Whenever you're finished, you will go ahead and just submit that assignment and it will send it directly to me, and I will grade your responses on the first page and then kind of look over and grade your responses that you did with your partner. If you guys have any questions, you can send me a message through Remind, or you can ask Ms. Johnson. She can either call or text me.